All right, good morning, class. Okay, other ones in class, are you all settled down? Ready for class? Yes, no? Yes, all right. Other ones online ready to begin the classes today? Okay, all right. So, trust that you all had a good weekend, that your Saturday and Sunday was good. But before we begin today, we can always start with a token of gratitude. So, what is something that you all are thankful for or grateful for today? And let's go through this quickly. Whoever wants to speak, you can speak up. The ones online, you can just raise your hand and we can put you to speak. What are you grateful for today? That you came on time?
I'm I'm grateful for God that I'm live in Christ.
Okay. All right, that's great. Who else? What are you grateful for? Whoa, nobody's grateful for anything. That's a little scary. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for the gift of friendship.
Hmm. It's really nice. For friendship. That's good. You're grateful for this lecture. Are you sure? You have to you have to come to you have to come every morning at 9. Okay, but it's good that you're grateful for it. Thank you. What else are you grateful for? You're grateful for opportunities. All right. That's wonderful. First row, nobody? Not grateful for anything. Grateful for your parents. Okay. It's really nice. Really nothing? Not grateful for anything? You're grateful to God that there's a new day. Okay. All right. So, shall we begin? So, I know that you can see that we're almost reaching at the end of the topics that we're covering. And today, by the way, before we start chapter 10, did you go through the last bit of chapter 9? The ones after marriage and family? I'll just quickly go through that and also address some questions that are there in the chat. Okay, so I will do that. Oh, where is the chat? That's not the chat. All right. So I'll just quickly run through chapter 9, address the questions on the chat, and then we will continue with chapter 10. But of course, with every class, like we're going to have drills at the end. So maybe I would, for today, I would go through the topics first and then come to the drills. So with every class now, we're going to have drills. So for the ones who haven't come front, as yet, just be ready. You will be called forward to do it. The main reason is because this class, the practical essence of this class is really important. Okay. So I'll just quickly run through the last bit of chapter 9. So when we're looking at particular issues in counseling, we have marriage and family, right? So when we're looking at marriage and family, do you recognize some of these things? Maybe that you may have gone through, or somebody who has gone through certain things. Do you recognize maybe in yourself also sometimes? Okay, the ones online, are you able to see my screen? All right, thank you. Okay, so when we're looking at marriage and family, there's so many things that affects a family, right? Sometimes it's finances, sometimes it's the people within the family, sometimes when the family goes through various life changes. Of course, in the book, there are many things that are written, right? Divorce and separation. Now, those are big things, but also something like a family moving from one city to another. Right now, that's also a big change, which can cause some friction within the family, right? Especially if they're young children and they're Adolescents also, some of them might not want to move because they'll miss their friends and they'll miss their school, right? So if you're looking through that list, there's so many things, right? So we have communication, we have things in the household. For example, if you don't want to do to wash the dishes every day, then it becomes a problem, right? If you're constantly arguing with your mom and with your siblings every day for not cleaning the dishes, now that's going to be a big problem, right? If it doesn't get resolved. Next, you also have if somebody in the house is sick, especially when you have chronic illnesses, right? And you have older parents or grandparents that you need to take care of. It's not so easy, right? And then we also have finances, and sometimes with your in laws might be a problem. And if somebody in the family is going through addictions, right? And these are all difficult circumstances, which, of course, common issues that we may face as counselors, that people may come to you. But one way to see this is again when we practice through drill. So we may take a few of the issues from here as examples. It might be funny, especially when we take on a few cases from here, but we'll try to do that, okay? Now, when you look at the common stresses in children and adolescents, what do you think it could be? Of course, there's a few things written on your texts, but what did you go through as kids back in school? What were your issues? What were your problems? I had an issue with our PT teacher. She would always make us run the ground like 5 times. Whether you can or you can't, a hot day, raining, you'd have to go there and run. So that was my main problem with that teacher. Otherwise, I think I was a good kid. I didn't get punished so much. But what were your problems when you were in school or in college as a
I,
teenager?
I had an issue with my maths teacher.
Issue with your maths teacher,
Yeah.
right? What else? What are the different issues that you can go through as a student? When your mom cooks your favorite dish, but your friend eats all of your tiffin. Okay. What else? What are the different things you would go through as students? You used to carry? Oh, you had long hair, so that was a problem. Okay. But, oh yeah, in school you can't leave long hair, right? You're not planning to leave your hair long now? You won't leave your hair long now? Okay. All right. So it's nice to hear that nobody, at least from this class, has brought out bullying or something, right? But bullying can be a really big thing, especially in today's day and age with a lot of things going on social media. Sometimes bullying is not too much of an in-person thing. There's a lot of online bullying and a lot of social media trolling that comes through, right? So these are common problems that teenagers these days face. Another very common issue is when you're surrounded by the wrong peer group, you might be influenced to go towards drugs, addiction, and all of those different things, right? So those are the things for us to be a little aware of, especially when it comes to body image. Now that is something that's also very common these days, right, for teens. And moving more towards the mental health sector, that side, mostly they go through depression, they go through anxiety so much, right? So these are a few things. Now when you're looking at the age during adolescence, many things can happen. Parents can get divorced, you might be going through a breakup, through different things in your relationship. So there are many little things that keep coming up, right? Now a few things when we are looking at taking care of counseling and all of these people, the last bit is really important. So now it's not just for these specific things, but when you're going through everything, through different clients that you may meet, we will have to remember that giving them a safe and secure environment, that's key. I think by now all of us understand how important that is, right? And next is when it comes to family, one thing that we need to really remember is family dynamics, right? Because every family will be really different and it would look different for every member of the family. The role of a father will be different, a mother will be different, an older son is different, an older daughter is different, the youngest son different, youngest daughter is different. Sometimes the pampering level might change, right? Sometimes for the middle child, it's really different. So, one thing to really understand is family dynamics, how it works within a family. Like now, if we look at all of our families, I'm sure all of us are very different, right? Some of us could be the older siblings, some of us could be the younger ones, some of us in the middle, some of us only child, right? So, the dynamics would be different. Now, the third one is really important. You are not a referee, especially when things are going wrong in the family. There's a high chance that when, suppose you're counseling young kids, you'll obviously have to meet their parents. They might come and tell you, can you please tell her to do this? Can you tell her to study? Can you tell him not to go out and play so much? Now, you can't do that, right? It's not your role to parent the child. This is important. You'll have to remember this when you're meeting kids. It's not your role to parent the child. The role of a parent strictly remains with the parent. You're just there as a helper to help them understand, okay, what's going on, what's wrong, and what are the different things that they can change. But you're not a referee. Sometimes they may tell you to, can you please help her with her studies and everything. You're not a tuition teacher, right? That's not your role. Okay, so remember this, especially when it comes to family. It is bound to come up at some point of time, but you will have to keep that in place, right? Next is learn how to develop trust, especially when you're working within a family, especially when situations are very tense. It's make sure that you're not putting a division within the family, right? Sometimes they might come and share like, oh, I think my dad is so mean and he's not doing anything. I think my mom is the only one who's there. Now it's not up to you to be like, yes, your dad is the bad person and your mom is the good one. Now that creates more division within the family, right? And especially when it comes to family, I know some things can be really tricky. So it is very wise for us to actually ask God to help us guide through it, right? Ask for Him for words of wisdom and guidance and knowledge for Him to be able to help, to tell you what to do. Is everything okay? All good? Okay. All right. Is something on? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so let's go to the question that is there in the chat. Mm-mm. David, could you just please explain a little bit more about what do you mean by the church support group so that I'll be able to answer this more correctly? David, are you there online? Okay. No mic, no video. All right, sure. Could you just drop in your the question in the text box, please, and then we'll take it up there. You can write, and then once you've put it up, I'll address it then. Okay? All right. So, thank you. Till before we get David's response, let's just move on to the next chapter. And we're going to look at chapter 10 today. We're going to look at counseling the abuse. Right now, these topics might be a little heavy, especially when we're looking at abuse and at suicide. Now, these are things that usually fall under our radar very often as counselors, right? Depending on which area and which field you're in. Field in a sense, whether you're dealing with kids, teenagers, adults, or maybe older people, right? Sometimes these kind of issues may come. And one thing that we will have to know is we would have to tread over these spaces very carefully. And another thing is realizing whether you can handle such cases or not, right? Because when we're talking about abuse, when we're talking about self harm, when we're talking about suicide, these things are very heavy. It might affect you from listening to all of these things, right? So, first things first, when we're taking such topics, you need to realize whether you can handle such cases or not. If you can't, that's completely fine. Hand it over to somebody else who can, right? Because it's not for everybody, and it's okay if it's not for you because this is actually something not for everybody. It's a little hard to take in, right? So, before we get into the chapter, let's try to understand what abuse is first. So, abuse is anything that is physical, sexual, emotional, verbal towards a person, right? And abuse is something that affects a person internally, and it can come in so many different ways, right? It's a violent behavior towards a person that inflicts a lot of pain, right? And pain can come through physical, sexual, emotional, verbal, or sometimes it's a combination of all of these combined together. So abuse is something that is violent, that is being afflicted on a person. It's solely meant to cause harm, no good. Okay. So, like another form of abuse is also neglect. This is usually you see this in kids as they grow up when their parents or their caretakers do not take care of the children, right? Maybe not providing them good food, maybe not being able to help keep them clean or give them a bath, like the basic necessities, right? Now, that is a form of neglect that can also come towards children. So let's look at the different kinds of abuse. So now the first one is physical abuse. Physical abuse is one of the most common and something also that you'd be able to identify very easily, right? How does physical abuse come from? How does it look like? It's there in your books. You can read your notes. How does it look like? Hitting. Pardon? Beating, throwing things. Throwing the person itself, yeah, especially when the person or the abuser is stronger, they can actually do that, right? And why is physical abuse the most easily seen abuse? Is because you will see bruises, right? You will see them being hurt. Sometimes you'll see them with a broken arm, or you'll see them with their leg battered, or sometimes these days, you know how tortures also come, like they'll burn you with cigarette butts, right? You'll see burns on their skin. If somebody Okay, if somebody is being choked, you will see marks on their necks, right? And sometimes if they're being hit, especially on their face, sometimes they may use makeup to try cover it up, right? And there's so many things that can come through physical abuse, right? So physical abuse is something that causes you physical pain. But remember, even though if it's a physical abuse, emotionally the person will be affected regardless, right? Especially if their abuser is a close person to them. Right now, the next one is sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse is contact between an adult or anyone who's younger than 18, right? It's usually done from an older person to a younger person, irrespective whether the abuser is a woman or a man, right? It's normally done on younger people, mostly under the age of 18. Of course, it does happen for somebody who's 18 years and above as well. But why 18 here is important is because if it's under the age of 18, all of them are still children. Like at least in India, the legal age of becoming an adult is 18. So anybody who's 18 and below is still a child, is still a minor, right? So there is another case when if it's a family member also doing it to any other family member, now that is called incest. That's a term that's used. And exhibitionism and pedophilia also falls into this category. Do you know what is the meaning of this? You know who pedophiles are? Yes? No? Okay, so pedophiles are older people who specifically target younger children, mostly under the age of 12, 11, and below, and they do a lot of sexual activities with them, right? For little kids to be exposed through so much, that is not good. But these people specifically target younger children and they abuse them, right? So abuse comes when in sexual abuse you do sexual acts to anybody who's younger, right? So that's there. Next, you also have emotional abuse. Now it's so openly because in the form of gaslighting. It comes in the form of threatening them, criticizing them. Sometimes when you yell and you shout, there's too much anger, right? Constantly. Now you have to, one thing that we have to remember about abuse is that it's never a one-time thing. It will happen over and over again during periods of time. Like we will get into understanding what an abuser looks like also, because that's a little important to understand what an abuser can do to make you feel stuck in the loop. Because normally when a person goes through abuse, they're stuck in the loop. It's very hard for them to come out, right? And some of us wonder, why is it hard? Like, just get out, just leave, right? But it's not so easy. So we'll try to look into that as well a little. But emotional abuse is something that affects the person's emotional state, and it's usually verbal, right? Because you say things to hurt the other person, right? Especially when you look at kids and teens, sometimes a lot of them develop low self-esteem is because they always say, you're worthless, you're not good enough, you'll never get there, this is so useless, why are you doing these things, you'll never amount to anything, right? All of these things, if you constantly say it, especially for a child, you'll believe it, right? And when you grow up as an adult and you don't see that changing, people still pull you down, you are bound to feel a low self-esteem, right? It's bound to happen. But the thing is, all of these things can always change, right? But this is how abuse can also come to anybody, right? So the next one is neglect. Now, neglect is one of the things that is a little hard to define when you're looking through the rest of the different kinds of abuse, because it occurs when the person is still little, right? It happens when the kid is still a child, like you're still a child. And it can look like when you don't have adequate food, housing, clothing, medical care, and supervision. So sometimes, when you're sick, not when you are sick, for example, a child is sick, but the parents don't take care of the child, they just leave. The child is burning through fever, but they're like, it's okay, it's fine. Now that's neglect. You're not taking care of the child. The child is hungry, the child is crying, there is food, you just choose not to give food, right? And you don't give the child a bath, you don't make sure that the kid has education, especially when you're able to provide all of these things to the child, you're choosing not to. Right now, that's neglect. It doesn't happen so often, but when it does, it's actually pretty serious and it's pretty bad, right? Now remember, it's not something that, like, the child is 10 years old, they want a phone, and the parents are like, no, you can't have a phone right now. That's neglect. It's not that, right? Neglect is when the basic needs of the child is not met. Did somebody raise their hand? I'm not able to see because of the screen. Okay, I do not see anything. All right. So remember that, okay? When you're looking at neglect, it's usually the basic necessities of a child that's not being given. And what are our basic necessities? Food, clothing, shelter, schooling, parenting, okay, um, medical, their medical needs, right? Now, when we're looking at neglect, one thing that we'll have to remember is also where the family comes from, right? Now, if the family is not well to do, they don't have too much, maybe a few of these things may not be met, right? So, suppose, example, the family only doesn't have a house, they're living on the streets, right? Now, that's a very difficult thing to tackle because their whole family only doesn't have a place to sleep, right? So, when we're looking at neglect, all of these things also come in the picture, right? The background of the family, what they do, how they come from, their finances, and all of those things are to be considered, right? Now, before we get to how a counselor can help, I would just like to talk to you a little bit about what an abuser can look like. Okay? Now, how do you think an abuser can be? Very cunning. Okay? How do you think an abuser would be like? How would the abuser behave? Will also look like a normal person, correct? What else? What else do you think? What are the things an abuser would do? Like you said,
I am thinking of the sexual abuse, and he would be very friendly and very enticing.
you'd be really friendly also at the beginning, right? Now that's very good. That's a very important point to remember. You look like a normal person, be really friendly, would also be really cunning, right? What else? These are really good points. What else? Pardon? too good to be true kind of a character. Too good to be true. They'll be really good with their words also, right? Have you seen in movies, this is very common, especially in Hindi movies, where the guy would come, will hit the girl so much, and then she'll cry, and then he'll be like, no, come, come, I love you. And then it'll be such a difficult situation for the person also to get out, because after the person will abuse the other person so much, they'll shower them with so much love. They'll be like, I'm so sorry, I'll never do this again, I promise I'll not do it. Then for 2 3 weeks they'll be fine, then again they'll do it. And they'll be like, no, no, come, I promise I'll change. Right? They do so much, right? To keep that person in the loop, because then that person, it's really hard in reality for the person to leave. One thing is because they'll know the person, right? They'll know the person who's abusing them. 90% of the time, the abuser is somebody whom they know, right? It'll be either an older relative, a cousin, a sibling, sometimes close family members, a neighbor, right? People whom they've seen growing up, which also makes it harder for them to even speak up, right? They'll be like, I know this person. And what would everybody say now if I say things about this person, right? So tackling situations like this becomes very crucial, right? And one thing is that we need to understand when we're looking at abuse is that God detests violence. No matter what kind of violence it is, God detests it. So when you're looking at Proverbs 6:16 to 19, if you have your Bibles or anything, you can just check that. So Proverbs 6:16 to 19 says, there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hand that sheds innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Right? When you're looking at these things, it's very clear. Everything, whatever we're looking at abuse, is a straight no from God, right? I'll just repeat that again because there's all of that entire verse, all of those verses, those keywords are really important, right? Proverbs 6:16 to 19. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that sheds innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community, right? And another one, when you look at how much God detests all of these things, when you're looking at Psalms 11, verse 5, the Lord examines the righteous, but the wicked, those who love violence, he hates with a passion. Now, saying that God hates something with a passion, I don't think I can even comprehend how much that hate would be, right? Because when you're passionate about something, you pursue it, right? All of us have so many different passions. We're passionate about music, about food, about cooking, about art, sports. And when you're passionate about something, you run towards it. Now, God is saying that He hates all of these things with a passion. I think that that whole line is enough to understand how much all of these things do not sit right with God at all. Right? So, violence is violence. There's so many things that can come with it. And especially when you're looking at domestic abuse and so many things, there's a lot of details that goes into it. It's a cycle, right, that happens over and over again, especially for all of these different abuses. Also, you'll always notice that it comes in the form of a cycle. It'll always start small and then it becomes bigger. It'll always, so let's take domestic abuse for example. It'll start off with yelling first, then after yelling, one slap, right? Then they'll hit the person. Then they start pushing the person. They'll throw things towards the person. They'll start breaking things, become more abusive with time. Then at the end, they'll always say that, I'm sorry, I love you, I'll change, right? Which makes the person really confused because, like, for example, not for example, that person will go through so much of emotional turmoil, and this person is coming and saying, I'm sorry, I'll change. Especially if it's somebody whom you love and whom you know, you'd want to give them a second chance, right? You'll be like, okay, let's see if this person changes. So it takes a while for the person to come to a place to realize that, okay, maybe this thing will not change, right? But why does that become really hard? Because then you'll have to let go of the relationship, right? Whoever is involved in this, whether it's the person in and around you, male or female, you will have to let go of the relationship. Now, if the relationship has been extremely abusive and there are threats, I'll kill you if you tell somebody, I'll kill somebody whom you know, I'll take your friend, I'll hurt your friend, I'll take your pet, I'll kill your pet. All of these things they might say, right? Which makes it really, really tough for the person to be able to get out, right? Now, in all of these places, a counselor would be present to help, especially when they've realized that, okay, I need to seek help, or somebody in and around them is reaching out to them, like, let's get help, let's see. Right now, the first thing that we need to do is we need to believe it. Right? There may be so many people in their lives who may not believe what has happened, especially if it's a relative. They'll be like, how can you say that? He's your uncle, or he's your cousin, or she's your aunt. How can you say that? That's impossible, right? And sometimes when it's within family, it makes it even harder, because then the entire family would be like, no, no, I don't think so. Like one of us said, it's too good to be true. Like the person is too good to be, like, to have done such things, that nobody would believe them. So as a counselor, it's important for you to believe, especially when you know that this could be technically the last person that they may speak up to, the only one who would believe them, right? So listen to their entire story and confirm their feelings, as in try to understand the feelings that they're going through and don't dismiss their feelings, right? They might come with a conflict of feelings, right? They may say that I've gone through so much that I can't believe that this is happening to me, but I also care for that person. Things like this can come, right? So it's not our job to be like, no, you can't care, you should let go, and all of these things. It doesn't come initially, right? At least for the first 3 to 4 sessions, especially if it's an abuse kind of situation, it takes a lot just to gain that trust for them to be able to openly talk. And it's okay if it takes a while, right? These are things that can't be rushed. Next, just look at the next sentence after that. Even if you know the person involved and can't believe that he would do that to the victim, keep an open mind and give an opportunity for the abuse to tell their story, right? Now, there's a chance that somebody whom you know might come and they might bring up a person that you know. Now, that's going to be tough on you as well, right? It's not just that person involved. So, one thing is, as a counselor, you'll have to remain professional. Confidentiality is key, and the no judgment thing, the no bias thing has to play regardless, because right now your concern is the well-being of your client who has come to you, right? Now, next is, be aware that they may not see themselves as abused people. Now, maybe when somebody comes and talks to you, they may say like, yeah, when we get into a fight, she will slap me, throw things around, break things, leave the house, and then come back. But it's okay, like it happens, because after that we reconcile. And maybe the first thing that comes in your brain is like, oh my God, this person is getting abused all the time, but they don't see it, right? Now, sometimes they may not know that it is abuse. So, as a counselor, this is called psychoeducation. Is when you tell them, okay, listen, we need to understand that there are different kinds of abuse, and this is what each abuse can look like, right? You're not telling them that this person slapping you every time they get into an argument is abuse, but your job is to tell them, see, these are the different kinds of abuse and this is what it looks like. What do you think about it, about what's been happening, right? So you see that you're being neutral, but you're also showing them like, okay, see, this is right, this is wrong. You see and decide how to move on from there, right? Next is, especially when they've known that they're going through abuse, appreciate their courage. It takes a lot for somebody who's gone through abuse to come and share their story, right? Especially if it's been going for a while, right? The next thing that can come when they've opened up is that they'll be scared. They'll be so scared that what if this person comes to know that I've spoken to somebody, I've told somebody about what has happened, right? So encourage them, try to build their courage, right? And in all of these things, please seek God's wisdom in navigating through this, because when He gives you exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it, all of these things become a little easier. Now, remember that if you're dealing with such cases, it'll take a toll on you also, right? So, remember that never leave out God, especially when you're dealing with things like this, right? Next is you'll need to ask questions about what's going on, what has been happening in the past, right? Because in these cases, history is really important. You'll need to know how far back has it been happening, who has done it, whether it's just one person or has there been multiple people involved, or different situations, different scenarios has been coming up, right? It's important for you to understand because you need to see if there's a pattern, right? Because sometimes there's a chance that this person might be, you might see that unknowingly they might be going towards certain people who does certain things, right? Maybe if they're so used to keeping to a particular type of a group, right, like a friend group or like a peer group, who constantly expose themselves to all violent activities. Now that is something that maybe they might need help with, right? So a lot of questions become really important to actually understand what happened, where it happened, why it happened, right? And what is happening now also. So past, present is really important in this case. Next is be supportive, but do not tell them what to do, right? Do not tell them what to do. You can give them various options, right? You can show them many things, but at the end of the day, it's their decision to decide how they want to go ahead with it, how they want to proceed, right? Remember, even in this case, you're not a referee, right? Except when it comes to cases when it gets like really hard and then the law gets involved and then cops get involved. Like so many things can come, right? Especially when you're dealing with such cases. But we're not looking at that extreme. We're just looking at you being inside the counseling room with the person, right? You can show them various options that they can consider, right? But we are not the ones to tell them, okay, I think this is what you should do. That word shouldn't come out of our mouths. Like this is what I think you can do. But what you can do is give them options. Like, okay, let's discuss options for the different things that we can choose from. Could it be that there's somebody whom you can talk to? Is there a friend? Is there a relative? Or is there another place that you can stay for a little while? Like, what are the different things? What are your options right now, right? Explore different options, but that final decision should come from them of what they want to do. They may say that it's okay, I live in the house. It might be really hard for you to take it. Maybe you've spoken to them for three sessions and they still decide to live in the house. That's fine. It's their choice, right? What you can do is be supportive, right? Except if it's in a crisis and they are in danger, like extreme danger, that their life is being threatened, then whatever has to be involved would be involved, right? Whether it's getting another family member whom they trust to know to get further steps to be taken, right? Whether they'll have to contact the law or get in touch with the police. There'll always be somebody, at least in the family, whom they'll trust, or a very close friend. There will be somebody, right? But it's important to then get them involved if it's like a danger thing, like this person might be killed or this person might die, right? Next is keep your conversations confidential and do not contact the abuser. And tell this abuser that so and so has come and spoken to me about these things, unless your client has given you the permission to do so. Now, because you see the client for just 1 hour in a week, this person is with the abuser every day for the rest of the week. We don't know how much that one phone call might then affect them, right? Because so long as they're with you in that room talking to you, they're safe. Because they're with you, you're a safe space, a safe person, right, to talk to. But then they'll be with the abuser all the time if that's the case, right? So make sure that that doesn't happen unless the client themselves gives you the permission to do it, and you do not give away any information also, right? Now the next one is never advise them to return home to work things out with the abuser, especially if it's a family member, it's a partner. We might say that, it's okay, forgive them, or learn how to reconcile with them, like many things that can come, right? It doesn't work like that. because this also means that we are telling them again what to do, right? We are not advising people. Like, our job is not to advise, our job is not to be a referee. You're just there to guide, give different options, help them understand, like, see, these are the different things that you can also do. What would you like to do? Right? The last one, if they choose to return home against your advice, right? Even if they know that things is hard, make sure that they know how to contact you if they need help, and maybe if you could call them and check, right? But again, realize that by giving them this option, you are also now going to be in a space where they might call you at any point, at any time when something goes wrong, which could be 9 a.m. in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, 12 at night, 2 a.m., different timings, right? So when we're dealing with such cases, firstly, realize your own capacity as a person, whether you can or you can't, right? If you can't, absolutely fine. Send them to other people who would help, because there's so many professionals who are specifically working towards helping the abuse, the ones who've been victims of trafficking, exploitation, violence, so many things, right? There are people who are trained enough to help them, right? With the amount of work that we are doing right now, I'm not sure how many of us will actually be moving towards this space, right? Because moving towards these spaces would require more training, more understanding to learn how to deal with certain things, right? So know your own strengths, know where your limit lies, and then move ahead with this, okay? So now, how can Christian counseling help? So where does Christian counseling come into the picture? Finding biblical answers to lifelong difficulties. The Bible will always have a few things, right? For example, like the verse we read earlier, if they're confused about what violence is, they might say that, no, I don't think that's violence. Okay, what does the Bible say about violence? What does the Bible say about hitting people, hurting them, saying the wrong words, right? The Bible has answers to that, right? Next is improve relationships with friends, family, and spouse. Now, this is where that thing comes in. Like, never advise them to return home, right? Because for us, we know that reconciliation is something that is good, right? Improve your relationship with your family, even if they've hurt you, forgive them. But then sometimes, if they've abused you so much, now that's a question mark. How does that come in, right? That's why in such cases, you will need God's wisdom to discern this, right? It's not so easy as just like black and white. Next is live in freedom and hope through Christ. Why? Because these people might feel like there's no more hope for them. It's the end of the road. If they find out that I've come and spoken to you, that's it, right? They might have these thoughts. But then remember that through Christ there is always hope. It might seem tough now, but God is somebody who would avenge the faithful, right? He would look after his own people. Never once did he leave his children to face all of these things. Of course, it might seem that it's tough, right? But God is always ever present, and in Jesus, there is always hope for things to change, right? Next is experience forgiveness and resolve deep emotional wounds. Now, sometimes they may not be actively going through an abuse, maybe they've gone through it and now they've grown and like they've moved on with their lives, but they'll have emotional wounds, right, from the things that has happened before. So then it's important to help them resolve these wounds, because they'll be carrying a lot of hurt, especially if they've gone through abuse. The hurt is real, right? So what we can do is help them experience what it's like to forgive, because so long as we're carrying that, we're not able to forgive, it's a very heavy burden, right? It might not come so easily for them to forgive somebody who's abused them also, right? We need to understand that it'll not come so easily. It'll take time, but journey with them through that, right? Next is apply the word of God in life in practical ways, right? God's word will always tell you about so many things that you can do, right? Maybe the first thing is find peace within yourself first, right? You can't pour out from an empty cup. So how do you find joy within yourself again? How do you find happiness? How do you find that calmness that's there within you, right? There's so many things that God's word tells us to do by just simply speaking God's word over yourself, right? Like, there are different verses, right, that comes to peace, security, wholeness. Just by speaking God's word, that's also step one. Next is what are the different other things then that you can do, right? Because the Bible also tells us to lead a healthy lifestyle, eat well, surround yourself with good people, have a good community, right? So now, how can these people practically apply these things in their lives, right? Okay. Difficult topic. Anybody, any questions? Any doubts that you may have? Okay, there is a question in the chat. At what stage would you need to talk to both abuser and abused, especially when dealing with close family members like husband, wife, because they continue to live together? Now, this solely would also depend on the person who's coming to you. If the person coming to you is the abused, it would have to be in a state or in a stage where the abused would be okay if their abuser also comes in and this is being brought up, right? So the first thing that we can check is if the person coming to you for the sessions is ready to have the other person in with them, right? Now that's one. Next is a few things. I'll just list a few guidelines, right? The second one is you can have like a pre-planned list of like, okay, when they come, these are a few things that we can discuss about or we can talk about, right? But this ideally doesn't happen within the first 2 to 3 sessions, because within that time a lot of work goes with the person who's come in for the session. We would have to help them understand what has happened, help them process, help them regulate all of their emotions and their feelings first, help them understand that, there are different steps that they can move ahead and do. If they think that calling the abuser would be something that they would want to do, then go ahead. But it shouldn't come from us that, why don't we call them in and have a conversation with them, right? For all of these things, it's really important that we ask the client what do they want to do first. And if you think it's necessary as a counselor that, okay, you may need to talk to the husband or the wife because they all live in together, please make sure that all of these decisions that are taken with the client who's coming in. None of these decisions should be taken without asking them first of how they would want to proceed. Did I answer your question? Did that help?
Yeah, it is well answered. Thank you.
All right, all right. Anybody else has any more questions before we close? Also, please read. We're approaching towards the end, but it's really important that you read all the previous chapters, okay? But before we close for this hour, anybody, any more questions? No? All right, then. All right, thank you so much for joining in for this class, and I will see you again in the next hour. Thank you, class.